This weekend marked 51 years since the disappearance and murder of the icon herself, our patron saint of the cross, Juanita Nielsen. For more than 50 years, hundreds of people have talked about Juanita, the woman who used her privilege to call out inequity and fight for change. But let's start from the beginning. The big news in the early 1970s was that Sydney's eastern suburbs was finally getting a train line, including a brand spanking new King's Cross station. Suddenly, King's Cross, Woolloomooloo, Darlow, and the surrounding suburbs became far more accessible and desirable for housing development, making a select few extremely rich. A train line, harbour views, prime real estate, the chance to make an absolute fortune. Babes, that's the Sydney dream. The catch? People already lived there. Victoria Street and its surrounds were one of the few places left where housing was cheap. Artists, migrants, pensioners, students, squatters, sex workers, no matter who you were or your background, housing was available for those who didn't want the traditionally WASP suburban life. So, what do you do when you're doing very nicely in the criminal underworld? Have a few coppers in your back pocket, mates in politics and the judiciary, and these pesky human beings are standing between you and making an absolute truckload of cash? Easy. You send in the standover men to smash down doors and drag people out of their homes. And if that doesn't work and the ABC starts filming it, well, houses have an unfortunate habit of catching fire. Unfortunately, one night an electrical fire, where there was no electricity connected, claimed the life of a young First Nations woman as she was sleeping in a Victoria Street squat. Enter Juanita. Publisher, activist, and all round icon, Juanita Nielsen joined other urban conservationists fighting to protect affordable housing in Woolloomooloo, King's Cross, and the Rocks. Coming from a life of privilege, she used her position as a publisher and editor of Now magazine, a publication originally started by the Wayside Chapel as a community newspaper before Juanita transformed it into a fearless political voice to expose corruption and stand up for the local community. That kind of activism puts a target on your back. There was a lot of money at stake. Powerful people had already dealt with tenants refusing to leave. They dealt with squatters. They dealt with the media. And now they had to deal with Juanita. On the 30th of June 1975, an alleged attempt to kidnap Juanita from her home on 202 Victoria Street was reportedly foiled when her partner David Farrell answered the door. 5 days later, on the morning of July 4, Juanita left her home to attend a business meeting at the Carousel Club to discuss advertising for Now magazine. She was never seen again. Over the years, there have been countless investigations, podcasts, books, and documentaries. If you lived around here long enough, chances are you've met someone who knows exactly what happened. But despite all the theories and despite a $1 million reward, Juanita's disappearance remains unsolved. So too does the death of the young First Nations woman. Both of these women had families, friends, dreams, passions, and futures that were stolen by greed and corruption. Sadly, the fight didn't end in 1975. According to the Potts Point Preservation Group, recent development has resulted in the loss of more than 150 apartments, making that an average dwelling loss of 58%. In the new build, studios and one-bedroom units have disappeared, replaced by fewer, larger luxury apartments, making the area even less affordable to the average person, at least for a short period of time. But the developers are not obligated to provide the bare minimum. And recently, there have been discussions of poor doors, meaning those who have access to the affordable apartments have to use a separate entrance, creating an apartheid of class, which is fucked that it's even a topic of conversation in Australia. Honestly, it's revolting. Now, before anyone fires up in the comments, we're not saying today's developers are the same people involved 50 years ago, but we are saying the same fight continues. And who gets to decide what kind of community King's Cross becomes? This week, as we remember the mystery of Juanita Nielsen's disappearance and murder, we also have an opportunity to continue the work she fought for. Recent planning changes have made it easier for developers to bypass existing affordable housing requirements while building highly profitable luxury apartments. If we want to stop the displacement of our neighbours, friends, and community, this issue needs to be debated in New South Wales Parliament. Please sign the petition via the link in bio. Juanita paid the ultimate price for standing up to corruption, power, and greed. More than 50 years later, her disappearance and murder remain unsolved. The greatest tribute we can pay her isn't simply remembering what happened, it's making sure the fight she gave her life for continues.